Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Welcome back to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with me, Karl Fitzpatrick. Well, with the newly opened Enniscorthy bypass and the new Ross bypass being just around the corner, I felt it was an opportune time to invite David Fitzsimons, the CEO of Retail Excellence Ireland, to join us on the programme to share his advice with retailers about how to adapt to a post-bypass economy. But David, start by reminding us about Retail Excellence Ireland.
Good morning, Karl. Yeah, we were established 24 years ago in Tala, Dublin. The square had just been built and it cast a big shadow over the village of Tala, and I was asked to kind of come in and try and assist the retailers there, and I suppose it grew to be a not-for-profits independent national company representing about 2,000 retailers. So we talk to government on behalf of the industry, we run awards, we run events, education, and provide basically services and supports to lots of retailers around the country.
So you very much have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in retail right across Ireland. So how would you describe the retail environment in Ireland at present?
It's a challenge. Lots going on. Obviously, the big fundamental today is Brexit. It's having two kind of negative impacts on the retail industry. One, it's causing problems in terms of retailers sourcing product to resell to consumers. Most retailers would source product from UK wholesalers. They're today having to scramble and find other non-UK supply sources. And that's having its own problems, because if you go to Holland or Spain or France to buy, you normally have to buy in bigger quantities. So it's obviously tying up a bit of cash, and it's creating a problem around warehousing and trying to store larger quantities of product for retailers. And the other negative is consumer sentiment. So obviously there's a lot of people who are dependent on a salary that derives from a company that potentially sells into the UK, if it's farming or dairy or alcohol or whatnot. And those customers aren't feeling great about themselves today, considering the fact that the company they work for is potentially not going to be able to sell as much product into the UK market into the future.
So how are retailers adapting their businesses to this Brexit environment?
Well, a lot aren't, to be frank. But the proactive ones are going off, and they're finding alternate suppliers, and they're forging new relationships with those suppliers, and they're removing all dependency on the UK market. So they're having nothing to do with the UK market in terms of supply. But to be frank, Karl, others are not doing enough, and they're hoping for a positive outcome from the Brexit negotiations, and I would worry for them, you know.
So what advice have you got for them? Let's say there's a retailer that has been very, very dependent on importing product from the UK market. What are the starting points for them in terms of preparing for a post-Brexit environment?
So it's to find alternate sources of supply, Karl, principally in Europe. And that's going to have a couple of issues. One is legal. So the way international brands carve up the world when they go to sell a brand, UK and Ireland are normally lumped together. So, you know, if it's Lego or Pandora or whatever the brand is, normally UK and Ireland are lumped together. So if you're an Irish retailer wanting to sell that brand, you normally have to deal with a UK wholesaler. But obviously those international brands are now cognizant of the fact that Brexit's coming, and they will allow retailers to buy from alternate sources in mainland Europe. So that involves retailers hopping on a plane, finding new wholesalers in Europe, and doing deals to sell the product. In fact, I'm just off the phone with a jeweller who used to source from the UK. He's now sourcing from Asia. So he's gone off to Hong Kong, and he's developed and forged new relationships with suppliers over there.
And how are rural-based retailers performing at present? And is there any noticeable decrease in relation to footfall numbers on main streets right across the country?
Footfall is down, Karl. So face-to-face shopping, according to Visa, is 4% down. Provincial towns obviously have their own issues in that they don't have big destination kind of retail brands to visit with. And what we're seeing is an exponential, I suppose, increase in footfall into locations that are providing an experience. So if you look at the likes of some of the garden centres around the country, Ballyseedy and Tralee or Arboretum and Carlow, those guys have really got the fact that consumers want experience. So they're providing something to do, a day out, hospitality, food, a bit of shopping, and their car parks are full. And as town centres we need to work in a collegiate fashion together to do three things. One is to improve the offer as best we can. That's both in terms of retail, hospitality, and something to do. Second is public realm in terms of making our towns look impeccable in terms of the standards they keep. And then third is trying to better engage citizens with things to do in our town. So that's maybe having a gift card for our town, maybe having a database for citizens where we're pushing out text notifications about stuff to do. So I guarantee in Wexford, as an example, last Thursday or Wednesday evening, mammies and daddies were sitting around kitchen tables asking, what are we doing at the weekend? And wouldn't it be great if they'd received a text notification from Enniscorthy or New Ross or Wexford Town saying, this Saturday in Enniscorthy, it's family fun day, or it's a food festival, or it's an outdoor cinema night, or whatnot. So customers in Ireland today desperately want midweek convenience, which is nipping in and out to the pharmacy and the butcher's midweek and getting home and doing homeworks and kids and all that. But weekends, it's providing people with 2 or 3 hours worth of an oasis of something to do, to entertain the kids, to park the car up and just breathe and enjoy your civic space.
Now, over the last number of years, we have witnessed the emergence of forecourt retailing, with the one-stop service station gaining traction in not just fuel, but also in food. Can we expect retail stores to locate in these forecourts in the future? And if so, how much of a threat does this pose to retailers in rural towns?
I don't think so, Karl. So, look, the Irish forecourt scene is amazingly professional and bright. A case in point, my own chairman is Joe Barrett, who's co-owner of Apple Green. And when you see what they're doing, it's amazing. So they're now taking on the UK and the US market. So the forecourt guys some time ago realised that you fuel your car once a week, but you feed your body 3 times a day. And thus, they've been very quick to get into fresh food and coffee. I don't see them integrating any other form of retail into forecourt space. The one opportunity I see they're missing, and potentially this will come to forecourt in Ireland, is the evening economy. So, you know, where kids or people might go out for a pizza or a late night bite, forecourt isn't in their mindset as a valid choice. So I do potentially see a forecourt business in the future offering take-home, freshly prepared food for dinner, which they're not doing at the moment. So that's the only potential development I see coming in forecourt in the coming kind of 5 to 10 years.
Now, the Enniscorthy and New Ross bypasses are hot topics here in Wexford at present. So what advice do you have for retailers, both individually and collectively, for life after the bypass?
Well, first of all, I think it's a welcome development. We've all battled through Enniscorthy and New Ross on our way to Wexford, and we're taking a serious number of cars out of those towns that don't want to visit those towns. They want to get to Wexford. So there's real opportunity for us to make, obviously, towns in Wexford more accessible and easy, and for people to be able to park up and to do their business in those towns without having to battle with cars that are travelling through. That said, your competition up the road, the likes of Kildare Village or Dundrum, are far easier and more accessible today than they've ever been before. And thus we need to do some of the things we talked about earlier, which is people of Wexford getting a text, an easy notification, and giving them reason to go and turn right into New Ross or Enniscorthy for a day out, instead of not hearing anything from people in Wexford and turning left for the easy choice, which is your Kildare Village or your Dundrums.
If you were poised with the responsibility, David, of bringing Zara, H&M, River Island, Next and others to Wexford, how would you approach it?
Yeah, well, there's lots of smaller retailers that are on trend, the likes of Tiger Store, Sisters Green, Inglot, and those kind of brands that would be quite easy to bring because they want small boxes and they're very happy to sit and cohabitate on the high street. The likes of Zara and H&M and those, you know, the county council with local businesses, local developers need to figure out some bigger, nice, white, sparkly space for those guys. So, but again, it does require us getting out and talking to them and having a chat, talking up Wexford as an investment opportunity, but also obviously having the nice, clean, white space for them to come. But look, most retailers, when a county council and local town team come and talk up the spend and the number of chimney pots and such like in a location and make them feel welcome, in the majority of cases, those brands do decide to open.
Now, of course, we have to talk about online retailing today. It's a major threat, but also a major opportunity for local retailers. What advice have you got for retailers that have yet to invest in the online space?
The advice is do it. Ireland is a tiny market, and we're fighting up with each other for a small amount of spend in the Irish market. But when you look at Europe, over 350 billion will be spent this year online across Europe. We then have Enterprise Ireland, who are now permitting retailers to apply for their online grant of €25,000 once they have an international aspect to that plan. So that's a great amount of money to get small retailers online and internationalizing. I would definitely say to think outside the box. So if you're a retailer selling books in the high street, that doesn't mean that your online business has to sell books. And a case in point is Golden Discs, Stephen Fitzgerald. Stephen just posted another year of profitability. Stephen has applied for the Enterprise Ireland grant and he's won it. But Stephen will not be selling CDs across Europe. Stephen is setting up an international vinyl lounge across the world where lovers of vinyl music can come together, congregate, talk online about what they like and don't like about vinyl, and obviously buy some records from Golden Discs. So that's a great example of innovative thinking in an online world.
And how seriously should retailers consider putting their products on eBay and Amazon?
They should do it. It's easy, it's accessible, and it gets you in front of millions of customers. So it's a great way of dipping the toe instead of first investing in your own website. To sell off third-party vendor sites is a great way of kind of getting an understanding of consumption trends, getting an understanding of international markets and what works and doesn't work. You know, is it Germany we want to go to? Is it Holland? Is it Spain? Where is it? So there's a huge world of opportunity out there in the online space, and retailers should grasp it and enjoy it.
We've heard lots about omni-channel retailing over the past number of years with areas like click and collect, but what are the emerging digital trends that you're seeing?
Well, you've touched on it there. You know, it's funny, last Sunday in the Business Post I read a full-page article with our own Deputy Chairwoman, Jean McCabe, who owns a boutique here in Ennis-County Clare and also one in Galway. And while she was very concerned about going online originally, she now thinks it's the best decision she ever made, because 25% of all of her online sales are click and collect, and half of those that come into store to collect their product buy another product. So, you know, online doesn't have to be about selling to people in Peru. Online is about a business in Euros selling to people in the county of Wexford and get them to come in and collect their product. So you have to transact and do commerce in the manner in which consumers want to do commerce. And today they want to sit on their couch, open their mobile phone and buy a book or buy a dress with a local merchant online. And then when Saturday comes, they're happy to come in, park up and come in and collect the product they've purchased.
Now, customer service is still hit and miss in retail offerings right across the country. Why do you think that more retailers don't put a higher value on the retail assistant?
I don't know, because it's the biggest opportunity ever. So if you look at some of the biggest online pure play guys like Amazon, they're realizing that actually they're missing out on face-to-face time with customers. So they're going off opening shops. And yes, existing retailers who have stores don't see it as the advantage that it offers as much as it does. So the whole biggest, I sit in a couple of global retail boards, and the biggest trend globally is the two letters, CX, customer experience. And CX is all about a retailer and any business owner fundamentally understanding all of the touch points between a consumer and the business. And that could be about opening hours, it could be about queuing, it could be about merchandising, ranging, product pricing, whatever. But it's fundamentally trying to get into the head of the consumer, understanding all of the touch points and making them as fluid and easy as possible. So a good example today is in our cities around the country, retailers close their doors at 6 p.m. But consumption is changing dramatically. And in the likes of Dublin and Cork and Limerick, people leave their offices after a day's work at 6. And you know what? They actually want to shop and they want to eat. And yes, the retailer is closing their business. So we need to look at a more continental European model where we might close for a couple of hours in the afternoon, but we're certainly open from 6 to 8 p.m. when people with salaries and bulging wallets come out and want to shop. So it's fundamentally changing retail, and retailers need to change with the times.
And finally, David, what is your outlook for the Irish retail industry over the next 3 years?
It's good if we can get Brexit over and done with and rebuild a bit of consumer sentiment, and if retailers are willing to reposition and repurpose their business for consumption today. I think the opportunities are great. I think the fundamental opportunity in front of us is online, obviously, in terms of how people buy. And if you look, there's still retailers without a website. There's still retailers not with a website that don't send gift cards. There's still retailers with websites that are trying to transact and believe that they have to sell exactly what's in their store online. And if there was one thing from today's chat, Karl, that I'd say to retailers is don't. You could be a fashion retailer in Enniscorthy, but you don't necessarily have to sell fashion online. You could sell something totally different. So seek out an opportunity online for a product or a category of a product where an opportunity exists, and go for it. So you could have a retail store selling to people in Wexford downstairs, and on the first floor you could have an international business trading away. So that's the opportunity as I see it.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was David Fitzsimons, the CEO of Retail Excellence Ireland, and I would like to thank David for sharing his valuable industry knowledge with us this morning. Well, in other news, earlier this week there was a fantastic announcement for Enniscorthy when Opus Fund Services announced that it would be creating 100 jobs in the town with the opening of its new office. On next week's show, we'll be joined by the regional CEO of Opus Fund Services, Christian Pollard, who will be providing us with the lowdown on this exciting development for the county.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast.